Hold on. There we go. Well, guys, I just personally want to thank everybody that's watching. Thank Dr. Harris Lawson here today with us, as well as Pastor Everett, just for the opportunity to be able to, you know, really tell my story, talk about my journey and what it was like for me just to, you know, grow up being fatherless and being able to forgive my dad. I think that the more I talk to other individuals about, you know, fatherlessness and, you know, how they feel about it, I'm realizing that this is really common. When you start looking at the different statistics in regards to, you know, fatherlessness, that 1 in every 3, you know, children that grow up in the United States grow up fatherless. When we start talking about, you know, out of the entire United States, you know, being from Louisiana, when you talk about Mississippi, you know, is the highest and Louisiana is the second in terms of, you know, children growing up fatherless, it's like, whoa, you know. And then when you start just looking at, even as an African American, that over 56% of African American children grow up fatherless, it's like, this is really something that's serious and heavy that really needs to be, you know, talked about and, you know, very, very important. And so as I begin to dive in, you know, the impacts and wondering, you know, if it was just me and, you know, talking to other individuals, again, I just began to realize, like, you know what, it's so many other individuals that are experiencing, you know, some of the whiplash from growing up, you know, without a father. And so, you know, we're going to get into, you know, 5 of the facts of, you know, being fatherless. And that's why we have, you know, again, Dr. Trinice Harris Lawson on here to kind of give us an opportunity to address it from a professional standpoint. And we have Pastor Everett here to kind of help us tackle this from a spiritual standpoint. And then I'm here to kind of just talk about my experience. And again, a part of that, the 5 facts, you know, we're talking about fatherless, you know, has different forms. You know, I want to dive into that. Fatherlessness is not, you know, still not a normal thing. How fatherlessness also makes the relationship with the opposite sex, you know, more complicated. How it affects the in relationship with the church, you know, and God. And so it's just been one of those things where, again, I wrote this book in hope to help other individuals that struggle or, you know, constantly deal with the, you know, the issues and the shame or the guilt or the frustration or whatever it is that comes, you know, with fatherlessness, and hoping that they can find healing and forgiveness and reconciliation. So with that being said, you know, Pastor, would you like to kind of chime in on in your experience with fatherlessness from, you know, your perspective?
First of all, I want to say thank you so very much for releasing a much needed body of work that I believe is going to really help the healing process or continue the healing process for so many disproportionate communities, as well as, you know, people who are in church. Now, from my perspective, I'm gonna give it from my personal transparent perspective, but I want to throw this out there because I believe that people ought to talk to their pastor and their psychiatrist, right? I am a firm believer that you can be saved and psychotic. I'm a firm believer that you can have prosperity and deal with depression on so many different levels, whether it's chemical imbalances or whether it's situational imbalances. So one of the main reasons I wanted to make sure that I was a part of such needed conversation and such needed body of work, because as much as the community in our country and our city needed, our churches needed as well. And I know the doctor going to really give us some real good terminology to try to describe how so many of us use so many things as coping mechanisms to get through some of these hurting wounds that we haven't healed from. My personal experience with fatherlessness was very, very, very dramatic, traumatic on so many levels. I often wonder, where was my father? I met my father when I was 14 years of age. And for years, my mother had have 12 kids. And so to see everybody else had a father, and to see everybody else's father come and pick them up, whether it's on weekends throughout the week or sending them extra money. And and to hear about my father in the win, and just to hear from a verbal perspective of who he was, not being able to ask him questions about manhood, not being able to go play basketball with him, that was a very hurting thing. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you. Grew up quiet, and everybody thought I was quiet because that was my personality, but that wasn't my personality. That was actually my coping mechanism to isolate myself from other people, because I was so angry and bitter that I didn't have somebody to pat me on the back when I scored a touchdown, or somebody to say, man, good job when I played in the basketball game. But I would say this, that through all of that anguish and bitterness, some way, somehow, I was able to be placed around good men in our community. And those men kind of helped me along the way. So fatherlessness, to me, on a very personal level, it's a hurtful thing, to be honest with you. And here's the truth. What many people probably won't tell you this, that it no matter how old you get, no matter how prosperous you get, no matter how far you go, you still live with some of those wounds that have scabs on them, that the healing process continue. I catch myself even today in certain rooms, and I share this with you, Alvianne, in certain rooms, when I hear other people affectionately talk about their father, sometimes in those rooms, my whole body just cringe, right?
Yep.
Because it's like, man, I'm a pastor. I've had the privilege of traveling around the country, have a son, and still cringe at the fact that part of my life was so traumatic. So I'm excited about this body of work. Thank you for allowing us to be a part. And I can't wait for the doctor to tell me so I can write some of these notes down. So I get my prescription. Like... I'm getting my prescription tonight. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, Pastor, you're funny.
Oh my goodness. I'm having trouble with my my live over here, but we just got to keep this thing going. But so okay, Doc, let's get into you. Let's talk about what's your thoughts on this? Come on, why get us back on live?
Right. So Alvianne hit some really, really good high points, as well as some statements that Pastor saying. I think whether you're on the side of the coin, or whether you feel like missing a parent figure has greatly impacted your life or has not significantly impacted your life, I think one thing to remember, like, even the smallest impacts can throw the greatest punches or the hardest punches. And so one thing I kind of want you guys to take away from this conversation, that if you are actively pursuing a relationship or re-engaging in a relationship with a parent who's been missing, specifically a father, these are some things to keep in mind. I think that will help a lot of people if you make the choice to actively pursue a relationship, or if after reading a book you consider wanting to actively pursue a relationship with the father. I think the biggest thing that we want you to take away is it's okay to protect your feelings. Re-entering a relationship after someone has been missing from your life can be very hard. So it's okay to set healthy boundaries and healthy limitations. And so it's okay to say no. It's okay to protect your feelings. You do not have to allow, regardless of the role that someone plays in your life, allow their feelings to be your punching bag in that sort of way. So protect your feelings, create healthy boundaries. Also, another big thing that I noticed when actively pursuing a relationship or re-engaging with a relationship that has been missing from your life is managing our expectations. So being realistic about your expectations. Oftentimes, I find people in their stuck place. And what I mean by that stuck place is you're stuck in that 8-year-old child. Even though you may be 38, you may be stuck in that childlike place. And so your expectations are that of childlike. So as you grow older, relationships shift. We have adult-like relationships with our parents now. So your expectations of an 8-year-old is greatly different from a relationship that you have, or expectations of a 38-year-old. Mm-hmm. So when you're entering in this relationship, or you're thinking about pursuing a relationship with an absent father or absent parent, manage your expectations. Is this expectation that you're having with this person, is it even achievable? Is it even manageable? Is this person capable of meeting you where they are? Can you meet them where they are? And so when I say pay attention to where you are you holding this relationship to the expectation of that 8-year-old child that's still stuck to where that parent may have left you or may have left your life at some point or exit your life at some point. So pay attention to the expectations you're placing on that relationship. And to kind of dive into the next point of picking back off of that is also be mindful of acceptance and validation. That also comes hand in hand with your expectations. And specifically, when we were talking about being stuck in that very childlike place, oftentimes when you're stuck in that very childlike place, we all want validation and acceptance. Wow. It's nothing. I'll give you a prime case example of my toddler. She's 3. Nothing, the smallest things make her like so excited. She could have picked up her sippy cup, but she just wants me to hear. She just wants her mom to say, "Good job, you did so well." And it's so, it brightens her day. So we all are at that place where we want someone to validate us. We want someone to accept us. Nothing we want more than someone to say, "I'm proud of you. You're doing a good job." However, if you are still stuck in that place to where you're looking for that validation and acceptance, it's affecting you now and how you view relationships now currently. So be mindful of also, if you're pursuing any type of relationship, are you stuck in that place of acceptance and looking for validation from that point? Or are you doing things because it's something that makes you feel happy or something that makes you feel good? And then lastly, don't be afraid of therapy. I'm a big advocate for therapy. As an African American, we created this stigma that therapy is like for crazy people. And that's the furthest thing from the truth. Therapy, everyone goes to therapy regardless of color, gender, race, sexual orientation. We all go to therapy for some of the most normal things like relationships, stressors, jobs, family issues. And so therapy, I feel like, is a safe place that allows you to have an unbiased person who's able to help you navigate through certain stressors and certain things in life. So definitely, I would definitely be to say, like, try therapy if it's something that you're interested in, to help you kind of unpack some of the things that you may be stuck in or places you may be stuck in if you want to pursue a relationship with an absent parent. So that's my tip.
So we have someone said is that a strong point made there? I think she meant strong point made there.
Is that a strong point?
I think she was saying, look, he got his notebook out, Pastor, like, he's like, I got some points, you know, and that's the truth, though, you know, Trinice. I think I feel like some people are so afraid to have these real raw conversations about that. And I talk about this in my book, you know, where there was a situation where I was dating this guy and, you know, my childhood kind of, you know, came up. I'm hearing some feedback, I guess. Okay, so, but, you know, it was one of those things where, you know, when I was able to identify with myself and say, you know what, this is a issue from me having, you know, a lack of a father, we were able to reconcile. And I'll kind of briefly go into the story, you know, where we were going out of the country and he just kept making this joke about he was going to leave me. Well, I have abandonment issues, you know, playing about leaving me is triggers. I don't like it. I don't like that feeling. I don't want to play like that. It's not funny to me. And so he would constantly, you know, he would just keep saying it. I'm like, oh my God, you know, like, you know, I was kind of embarrassed to an extent to even say something, but I was like, you know what? I'm an adult about this. I don't have to hide about, you know, what it is. I'm like, listen, I know you're joking, but I don't find that funny because it kind of taps into my love strings or, you know, or my daddy issues of, you know, him leaving. And so like, I don't find that funny. And we were able to talk about it. Then afterwards, it became funny and we can laugh about it because we were able to kind of like clear the room and I was able to identify, you know, what that really was. And so my biggest thing, you know, a part of the book is why I called it Fate for the Fatherless is like, there's joy in, you know, the pain. There's joy in kind of going through this valley and the nuances of what comes with that. And it's okay because we were not really, you know, and Pastor, you can help me, but I don't think we were created to be in a single parent household. So there are still some needs, right, that we have to get from our fathers that, no matter how great our parents were, they just can't fulfill it. I talk about my mother in the book. My mother was amazing. She did an amazing job. And even though my daddy was a horrible father, she did not allow me to badmouth him. She She didn't allow me to disrespect them because she grew up with her father, and honoring her dad was the thing you did in our household. And so for her, it was like that wasn't acceptable. Yeah, he's horrible. Yes, he's on drugs. Yes, he's in and out of jail, but he's still your father. And that was her stance with me. Now, she also, because my mom was so well balanced, and I respect her so much for that, she also allowed me to feel and sift through my feelings. She allowed me to feel the hate or the anger or whatever that was. She allowed me to do that. But her only thing was, the only request was always, you still got to respect him. You still got to love him. You still have to, et cetera, et cetera. He's still your daddy, and so it would always kind of check me in a sense that, you know what, this is still my daddy. And the Bible says we have to honor, our father. So this sucks, but this is the reality. But again, as amazing as my mother was, as much as she loved me, as much as she poured into me, as much as she did all of those things and helped raise me, there were still some questions in me that only my father could answer. There were still pieces of me,
Yeah, I think that was an amazing point, Alvianne, to really hammer in on the strength of your mother, but also the well-roundedness of your mother. Let me just say this. From my perspective, and I'm not sure, I know Doc can relate to this, the family dynamic has changed over the course of years because we have allowed government to dictate our family structure. From the industrial age to this, what we consider to be an informational age, it has all shifted, right? So you had mothers who still wanted their child, even though the relationship between the mother and the father didn't work. They made sure that child had a better view of life, family, their father and their mother. And I think today, and once again, I have to commend you on this body of work because it's well needed, because the family structure has changed. Government comes in and tell our single parent mothers, as long as the father is nowhere around, they'll take care of them, right? I mean, this is facts. This ain't this. Now I'm talking from my perspective. I'm talking about all the people I might not counsel from a chemical perspective, but all the people I counsel from the social disparities that plague our community, that we have so many single parent mothers who are walking around, and yet they don't understand the importance of a father's voice. They don't understand the importance of a father's hug. They don't understand the importance of a father clap or a father's applaud. And because your mother had sense enough to say that he might not be here, but that does not mean that I'm gonna kill or destroy the relationship or the access to him and tell you not to respect him. And I think that's why, once again, this book is necessary, because we have a lot of kids today who they are struggling with some issues that it wasn't necessary for it to happen. You know what I mean? It's almost like, y'all didn't work out. I know he was your high school sweetheart, but don't take it out on me, right? I mean, I know I'm the child that probably y'all made a mistake with, but don't take that out on me. And now I'm walking around hating somebody that I don't even know. I'm hating somebody you did not afford me the opportunity to know or get acquainted with. And so I got this anger. Now it's against everybody. And I think, and this, I'm going to say this and I'm going to stop talking because I'll be here all day. I really believe that we're living in a society now that is numb emotionally to a lot of these issues, which a lot of these issues are very apparent as to why our kids are doing so many things to occupy their time or to try to give them some kind of joy and happiness. But to your point, I commend your mother. I really do. Now that's a man who have a child. I commend you.
Because it's and she did that, and and I appreciated her for that, because again, it would always kind of like check me in a sense of like, and it's funny that you said, right, that the importance of a father hug, and we need that. Let me tell you, and I talk about this in the book as well. I'll never forget this day as long as I live. In my mind, I hated my dad. In my mind, I wasn't going to his funeral. I wasn't crying for him. He was irrelevant because I was happy. I was okay. Especially like my high school years, I didn't really feel the true impact of being fatherlessness because, my grandfather was around, my uncle was around. I didn't really lack anything, right? So I didn't really truly feel it at that moment. And I'll never forget this. His grandparents, which were my great-grandparents, rest their soul, but they were my favorite human beings on this planet, right? So I would always go over there. Anytime they call, I'm running. And so, again, because even though my daddy was dysfunctional, my mom always allowed his family to have access to me, because they were good people. And so she allowed me to go. I'm at my grandmother's house. My dad, he's incarcerated. I'll never forget it. I'll go over there. I'm going to eat my cookies because that's my thing. When I go by grandparents, I want my cookies. I'm about to have a good time, you know. And I just loved watching them two love each other because they had been married for over 30 years. And just to see them two interact was just something that just filled my soul, right? And how my grandfather loved my grandmother. I just loved and enjoyed seeing that interaction. So the phone rings. It's my daddy. And here come my grandmother, your daddy on the phone. And in my mind, I'm like, I don't want to talk to him. I'm over here for y'all. But, you know, my grandmother asked me to do something, so got to do what granny asked, right? Yeah. So I hop on the phone, not even thinking nothing of it. And these words come out of my father's mouth. He was like, I just want you to know I'm so proud of you. I keep up with you. I got pictures on the wall of you. And I just want you to know I love you. But Daddy's so proud of you. Listen to me. Those words hit me like a 18-wheeler hit a Toyota Camry going 100 miles per hour. Wow. I didn't know where it was coming from. I didn't know I even cared enough. I couldn't even hold my tears in good enough. I had to like get a go from my grandmother and I'd run to the bathroom because I don't want nobody to see me cry. And I just started wailing in the room. I mean, like, boo. And I'm like, what is this that I am feeling? What is this? Like, I don't care about this man. Why do I, but those words, I'm proud of you, just did something to me. Hearing them come from my father. And it was just like, this is not right. This is not fair. Like, how does this man have this kind of impact on me? He's never been around. Like, this, what is this, Lord?
They're trying to discredit it. Right.
Yeah, and deny it and say that it don't matter and he's irrelevant, right? Because that's what I was, living by. But what it taught me and what that moment was and at that time for me was, that was the moment when I said, you know what, there's something here. Because I've always been self-aware, and just big on being self-aware, doing self-evaluation. That's just how I was. And so I was like, you know what, I really need to dive into this and really figure out what that's about, right? Because clearly there's some other stuff going on within me. But that was the day that I began to open my mind to say, you know what, maybe I do need to build a relationship with my dad. Maybe I should talk to him. Maybe I should write him back when he sent me these letters. Because I wouldn't even write it. He'll send me a letter. It's just like, toss it to the side, whatever. But that was the day that it kind of, I was like, you know what? It's time for me to just address whatever coming with this. Because this right here, this is some different stuff.
Hey, Doc, I want to ask a question.
Yeah. Go ahead. I was gonna piggyback off what you said.
Hold 1 second, Doc. Hold 1 second. I gotta get my notebook bag out.
Wait, but so while you're getting your books together, let me just chime in on what Alvianne was saying. So a lot of what she was experiencing was defense mechanisms. Oftentimes we numb ourselves to emotions and feelings, like especially when something is traumatic. You think about trauma. When you're going through something traumatic, your body physiologically doesn't even want to experience it. So you kind of push it out your mind, push it out your body, and you think that you're over something, or you think, just like, for example, you may say you're over ex-boyfriend and you see him and all of a sudden the emotions flood back in.
Wow.
So taking the time to really unpack stuff and process stuff lets you know if you're really over it. Lets you know if you're just allowing yourself to kind of say, oh, yeah, I'm okay. Just like I kind of talked about in the beginning, even things that you feel like have a small impact on your life can have such a great impact on your life, can pack such a big punch. So in the case of Alvianne, she thought like, oh, well, I'm over it. I'm managing. I'm happy. My life is functioning. He doesn't make that big of a deal in my life. But then when she heard something that was so validating to her and she needed it in that space and time, it really hit her like a ton of bricks. So that was really good, like you said, that you are self-aware. And she allowed that time to actually process and unpack. And so by allowing herself to unpack it, now she can really kind of like dig deep. One of the things I consistently say in therapy is you can consistently cut the branches off, but guess what? Branches can get pruned and grow back. But if you really want to stop something or figure out where something is, then you have to dig up the roots. And digging up the roots is a very difficult thing because then you have to figure out what the source is. You have to figure out, okay, where is this actually coming from? Where is this stemming from? Because as long as you keep picking the leaves, they're just gonna grow back. You just have to figure out how to undo the tree, unroot the tree. So.
Yeah. But that's the question I was about to ask about how when she said her body and the dump truck and all that, because I was like, I'd be experiencing that same thing, and I want to know if there's some correlation between psychological and my physiological perspective. I want to get that myself, that because I've experienced that a couple of times.
You feel feelings in your body. You feel feelings in your body first. One of the main things we teach people, like when they're feeling really strong emotions, especially kids, especially in anger management, we teach them to recognize the feelings in your body first. Your body is like, just like your body wakes you up in the night or as an alarm. Sometimes you have natural alarms that kind of wake your body up. That's the same way feelings are. You feel them first. So think about it. When you're anxious, you feel it what in your stomach, right? So if you're really mad, you might have a headache, or or your legs might start shaking. Physically, we feel emotions in our bodies, and that's our indicator. It's kind of like a yellow light before we get to red. It's flashing, saying, okay, something is wrong. Something is causing us to allow these strong feelings to emerge. So pay attention to the signals your body gives. Your body is going to tell you something before it actually happens.
Wow.
Yeah, it makes sense, because I'm telling you, I was just, it was, and I tell people all the time, like, again, being self-aware is so important, and, taking time to learn yourself. And I think being the only child for the first 8 years of my life helped me, be a loner, and was totally okay with being with myself. And maybe that's, because I still don't really know why I'm like that. But I always tell people in the part of even writing this book, it was like, me having to pull and dig deep. Like you said, Trinice, that's one of my big life philosophies. Let's get to the root of the problem. Because if we don't get to the root of the problem, it's a strong chance that we're going to revisit this, right? And so in order to like really cave into even some of the stories and areas of what I call thorns in my side that I talk about in the book, is important, because, and the reason why I refer to it as a thorn in my side is because this is a pain that never ever goes away. I don't care if you're married. I don't care if you have the love of your life. I had a man that loved me that nobody could tell me I could have found a greater love on this earth, and it still did not suffice. And that was a really, really eye opener for me, that, okay, there's not a man that's going to fill this void. Now, granted, I don't have children yet, but even when I talk to individuals that are fatherless with children, they say to me, it still doesn't fill that void of your father. And maybe, Pastor, that's something you can talk about, maybe, because you have children. And so it's kind of like, it's one of those things where I always tell people, it's that little ache that is always going to be there. But you have to be able to, again, be self-aware enough to say, what is this? And when it does happen, to sit down, unpack, talk it out. And for me, what I've always have to do is like, I have to tap on the Lord's, knee and say, okay, Daddy, I need you to fill me up. I'm feeling empty, or I'm feeling a certain kind of way, or I'm, whatever. And I need you to show up, because I don't have an earthly father. So now you got to come and, be my father. Yeah, and he has not failed me yet. You preaching now. He really hasn't. I'm talking about from paying a bill. I'm talking about from, I'll get frustrated, my car, whatever. He will find somebody, somehow, some way to get it to me. And, I'll never forget this. Now, this is not in my book, but this is another story. I kid you not. I had a friend of mine, that I allowed to borrow my rental car, right? Because my car was in the shop. I guess under the rental agreement, you're not supposed to allow other people to drive your rental cars. Mm-hmm. And this person got into a car accident. Not only did they get in a car accident in my rental car, they hit somebody else. And I remember getting that phone call, and my heart was like, but at first I'm like, I'm cool. I got car insurance, it should cover it. But at first they sent me a letter telling me they weren't going to cover it. And these people were suing me for like $50,000 per person. It was like something crazy. And I'll never forget it. I got to my knees and I just booed. I was like, Father, I don't have no earthly daddy. I don't have no father to call to fix this for me. And that I was trying to do right by somebody. I had an emergency. They had an emergency. I couldn't really drive at the time. They ended up, this is what happened. And, I need a miracle. I need you to show up. Yeah. This is like for real, and so I'll never forget it. About a month later, I get a letter in the mail from the insurance company saying, after further review, I'll never forget it, we find that we will cover this under this, da 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 da. When I tell you, I hit my knees literally. You know how people say I fell to my knees? I literally fell to my knees and was like, Lord God, thank you. Because it was one of those things where in that moment he showed me like, I'm your daddy, I got you, I'm here for you. And I can't even explain, and that's why I tell people all the time, like, you really still got to get to know God for yourself. Because it's one thing, when you're going to the churches and you're hearing it, but nobody couldn't tell me anything. Because when you experience God, and you really have an experience, can't nobody tell you about.
Come on.
You know what I'm saying? Because that experience gonna nip it every single time. Because we live in a society where our spiritual leaders fall. We all make mistakes and stuff, and so whatever. But it's like when you have that experience with God and you have that experience with Christ, then it hits a little different. And so I always tell people this is more of a spiritual book because this is my journey, and for me, it's been Jesus intervening and him stepping up and being there for me as my father, and and allowing me to heal and get through life. Because I even talk about that in my book too, like not having like me and Pastor was talking about this the other day. I was crying the other day, having a little moment because I'm like, I need some fatherly advice, and I'm tapping on heaven's gates, like, Lord, and if I could be really transparent, what really hurts about this all is that, yes, I know God is there, but it's still different having somebody on earth that you can just pick up the phone and talk to. You know what I mean? And I tell God that all the time. Like, I appreciate you being there, but it still hurt, Lord. Because I, you know what I'm saying? Because I still can't pick. It's not the same. You know what I mean? And I'm just being honest. It's like, Lord, don't get me wrong. I'm grateful that you have filled this void. I'm grateful that you have been able to like get me through it. I'm grateful that you have healed me and covered me and protected me. I'm grateful. But in these moments where I want to pick up the phone and I need instant advice, because sometimes you know how the Lord is. He don't come. Like they say, he don't come when you want him. And he come on time. Sometimes I need an answer right now, Lord. Because I can call my mom and make her get up. Look, I don't have a daddy today.
Right.
So, it gets a little different.
Hey, listen, I need everybody to do a couple of things. I need you to tag everybody who's fatherless. Share this broadcast with them. And I need you to text 504-384-6070 and join this conversation. Once again, man, I really believe this is a well-needed conversation on so many different levels. And if you're not physically capable or ready to go sit down in a group therapy session, I believe we got the doctor on hand. We have someone who actually experienced it. I just keep pointing to the doctor because I know the doctor got all my prescriptions here tonight, right? And it's a virtual group therapy going on right now. And I need you to share this with everybody and tell everybody to jump in the room, because some things that has been said already was so fulfilling to me, such as the whole physiological reaction to the emotional state or the psychological state. I never understood those connections. I promise you, I never did. And I was picking up the notebook for real. I really wanted that. I really wanted to get that for real, but to bring that up. But I now, I don't know how I jumped in here just now, but I really want to talk about that. Are you worthy? No, seriously, that's a big piece. And I think that's an undercurrent that's really plaguing, especially right now, since we're seeing such an influx of new entrepreneurs in the African American dynamic, but all that money still doesn't give them self-confidence and still doesn't give them self-assurance that they're worthy of what God has for them. And you wrote it in your book. So you got to talk about that.
Sure. In fact, like, this is a read aloud. I'll just read a couple of sentences and this is from day one. Are you worthy? In all honesty, even with all her love, positive words at times, I still question my value because I didn't have a father. As I finally grew to understand my worth and that my father's absence had nothing to do with it, it changed my life. It put me in a place of power. I no longer saw myself as a victim, and I stopped allowing people to victimize me. For me, I also read another book, and it was called Pulling Your Own Strings. And it just really allowed me to understand that sometimes, we can allow our insecurities or sometimes other people's insecurities, they will kind of put on us or allow them to victimize us through our insecurities. And so I remember people kind of making me, back in the day, not having a father was a thing. You know what I mean? Because everybody, when we grew up, parents, two-parent households more common than it is now. And so, growing up, it was like all my friends had fathers.
Yeah.
I was kind of like literally the only one that I could really recall in my group of friends that didn't have a dad.
Wow. Wow.
And so, I just was like, am I not worthy? Like, is there something wrong with me? Like, is it, if I look better, if I was smarter, if I, maybe then my daddy would come around,
Wow.
Is it me, Lord? Like, what is it? Because in my mind, I was a good girl. I was a Christian. I was doing everything the right way. I gave, I was in the community. It was like, I deserved a daddy, And so it was like, what was it about me or my mother, who again was raised with her father, right? She come from a two-parent household. It was like, what was it that me, Lord, that you picked me to be raised, without my dad? And
Wow.
so it just really, it took me a long time. And again, I have to give a lot of credit to my mother, because back then I really didn't understand what she was doing, but she was really molding my mind that you are worthy, that you are beautiful, that you can accomplish anything you can accomplish. I get that you don't have a daddy, but God equipped you. He knew you were strong enough. And this is how she would talk to me back then. He knew you were strong enough to get through this, that you were built for this, that you have a ministry. I mean, this is how she would be talking to me, her and my grandmother, so they would already kind of shield and shape my mind. That's probably why I didn't go all the way left field. You know what I'm saying? Because I was very angry about not having a dad. Especially with growing up with my grandfather, because I had my great grandfather and my grandfather. So for me, that was like my favorite people in the in the universe. And it was just like, why me, Lord?
Wow.
Why me? Like, what I did?
Wow. Doc, is that a common?
Hold on. One thing, but Pastor, didn't the Bible say that He knew us before we was in our mother womb? So I'm like, what's up, Lord? Why me?
People are gangster rank with the Lord. You see it?
Right. Doc, is that a common thing that when children see the absence of their father or something like that, the first person they start thinking fell short was themselves, or it's like they point that bullet to themselves?
Yeah, that's very common. Anytime you feel like something isn't normal or normalized, the first indicator, the first thing you're gonna blame is yourself. So you either blame yourself or you're gonna blame somebody close to you. So oftentimes what happens is if they aren't blaming themselves and they are holding anger, then maybe you'll blame or project that anger on someone close to you, like your mom. So even I've had situations where kids will blame their mom and say, it's your fault that you ran my daddy away. That's very common in African-American households. If you would have done this or you'd have done that, he never would have left. Or if you would have made a better choice than the man, he never would have even left anyways. Or we never even have got to that point. So I've heard that as well. So yeah, it's a very common thing often for people to blame themselves for things that are missing or inadequate in their lives.
I had that experience too. Now I don't know how transparent I can be. They say confession is good for the soul, but bad for reputation, right? And so we was riding one day, and I hope my mother not watching. So we was riding one day, and Michael Jordan was doing a basketball camp down here in New Orleans, and oh man, all the kids was talking about their father was taking them to the basketball camp, and I'm riding in the back of the car, and Lord knows I said something. I think I can't tell you what she did, but it was a bad situation, right? And I said, I wish I had a Caucasian father, because he could have afforded me to go to the Michael Jordan camp, and he would have brought me. I mean, it's all kind of wild stuff that you think when you don't have that fatherly figure. And once again, I was sharing in the beginning, I was so angry, so I didn't care what came out. I didn't care how people felt about how I felt about not having a father. As much as they had like a lot of men around and stuff like that, they still couldn't give me, like you say, they still couldn't give me what I expected from my father, right? It wasn't until I went to a father and son breakfast that my pastor brought me to, that Pastor John Montgomery. I remember to this day, he said, young men who's fatherless, you cannot be mad with your father any longer because he couldn't give you what he did not have, right? And I didn't understand it. I accepted it, but the older I got, I understood that he couldn't give me what his father didn't give him, and so it started looking like that transgenerational stuff that is being passed down as well. So I just wanted to know if it was common, but that "Are you worthy" piece was big, because I walked around too thinking that I wasn't worthy of a father, and I thought, what did I do wrong not to deserve a father, not for someone to teach me about credit and credit cards and talk to me about the birds and the bees. I still ain't have the birds and the bees conversation. Can y'all send somebody so we can have this? They be saying that on the movies. I'd be like, I don't know what they talk about, man. But anyway, I'm just clouded. I was just clouded. But yeah, so I think it's definitely awesome. All right.
But and also to add to that, I didn't mean to cut you off. Also to add to that, one of the things that I also emphasize or hone in on in therapy is, just like you said, I often believe in generational curses. And so oftentimes I feel like what happens too is, just like you made a very good point that I often kind of bring up in therapy when people blame their parents. And I said, okay, think about it. So if I put this addition in front of you, but I've never taught you addition, then how can I be upset at you if you don't know it? And that's the same principle I apply to your mother. If the mother before her wasn't a good mother and she had a poor example of a mother, then so it's kind of like you're passing on what you know. So it's like, what can you hold her accountable for? To a degree, you can hold them accountable because you're an adult and you know what's right and what's wrong. But to really understand and emphasize, that person may not have the capability to be a good parent. They probably don't even know what a good parent looks like. They have no idea what it looks like. So I often talk about that grace oftentimes in therapy too. Like, okay, so just extend the grace. So if you know that they didn't have a good example from their mother, and then their mother didn't have a good example, then what are they able to pass on to you? Probably not much. So if you can take that perspective and extend in grace and say, okay, let's work together. Let's figure out how to do this parenting together. Let's figure out how to develop this relationship together. And then I think that helps you also build it together, and then you guys, versus just holding on to the anger as well.
All right.
Yeah.
That's dope. Hey, you Alvianne, you giving some books out or something?
Yes.
Yeah.
So anyone that's watching, if you want to just text me at 504-384-6070, I will ship you a free book.
Woo! Let me get my phone right quick.
So man. Get it, and I would love to know, what you think about it as well. So after you get it, you can still text that number and, let me know your feedback. I would love to know, how the book impacts you.
That was something else. Am I asking the questions? I'm asking too many because I came here as a student and a participant.
You ready? Right? But I'm at the charging for these therapy sessions, Pastor, because you're asking too many questions.
Send me the invoice, but I'm telling you right now, you about to get these questions.
Tell us who the winner is first before you ask your question.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. Y'all talking, and I'll tell you the names. Give me a second. I'm not the best tech savvy person over here.
All right,
so look, Doc, let me so we keep talking, we saying about, and I know the spiritual aspect of it, that healing could take place, right? And we don't want to keep that out of the conversation because Alvianne did mention that there's a spiritual component to the book that really helps you with the process. I really want to know, like, how you turn that corner as you enter into adulthood. You said something in the beginning and you was on the roll, so I couldn't stop you and ask you, like, because I say it differently in church, so people, it can like a shock value. I always say things like, you have grown men sound like little boys, right? Or you have grown women sounding like little girls. And in essence, to parallel that, you was talking about how some people are in that stuck place, right? How often do people really like kind of trace that back to the fatherlessness, or do they go forward, just continue to say things like, you're just going to accept me for, as I am, or I am who I am, and if you don't love me this way, blase, blase, and I'm saying this because, let me get my notepad before you answer, but I'm saying it because that, like, it's just so much that people really don't trace that back. And since we're talking about fatherlessness, I think that is a big piece, right?
Right. I think just like Alvianne talk about that kind of self-awareness of recognizing where you are, understanding the negative feelings that you feel. So if you feel like that you are consistently projecting negative feelings oftentimes towards this person that's absent from your life, specifically a father, then okay, maybe you need to address, like, why is there such aggression, or why is there such anger or irritation or irritability every time this person calls? And so where does that come from? Like, what are your experiences? What are your memories of this person? If your last memory of this person is them walking out the door and you don't see them for 6 years later, then that's the lasting thought in your head. And maybe that is ruminating over and over again, and it's playing over and over again. And so that's causing for you to be in a place of a lot of hurt and a lot of anger. And so that's why I talk about that therapy piece important. So if you get into therapy, you get somebody who can help you unpack those things and say, okay, I see that you're consistently stuck in this place. You consistently talk about this moment in time, this place in time, and you want them to meet you at that moment and place in time. But that moment and place in time is in the past.
Wow. So how let me jump in that, Doc, right there, because
sure.
Like, how do they, like, how do you recognize that in relationship? We didn't migrate into relationships. So how do you like catch that? Like, and let me say this, there's somebody probably watching saying, how do you translate that to them without them feeling like you're judging them, or without them feeling like you think they're mentally ill? You know what I mean? Like
Right.
what are some of those soft words or the right verbiage to be able to communicate to them you stuck without telling them that they stuck?
I think one of the biggest things, and I think Alvianne hit on it, and that was one of the points I wanted to tell her, is triggers. Triggers are huge. We all have triggers. And so many people are unaware of their triggers. And the unfortunate part about being in a relationship with a person who has issues with their parents or missing parent figures, they have so many unhidden triggers. And the unfortunate part is a partner always encounters the triggers. So I may have said something to you like, you leave dishes in the dishwasher. That may have been a trigger about someone accusing you or criticizing you or not validating you. And so now it's a huge argument. But to the partner, it's like, well, I just said something about those dishes.
Right. Something so small.
But right, something so small, but then it's a trigger. So I think one of the things as a partner is to recognize and say, hey, I noticed that you got really upset about that. Be as sensitive as you can, to the situation, and be as caring as compassionate, express empathy to that person. It's like, hey, I noticed that you got really upset about that. Do you know what's going on? Do you know why that made you so upset? And sometimes people cannot identify why they made them upset. And then sometimes they can, and sometimes people just don't want to even address it. I've had people that are fully aware that they're harboring anger and frustration and many different things, but are not ready to face it head on. Because you remember, when you unpacking that bag, you unpacking everything that comes with it. And you're digging up years of buried emotions. And it can be really difficult for people to navigate through. And it's a process. And that process really works well with therapy. So you're getting in there, you're taking each layer of clothes and you're unpacking them and you're taking them off, because it puts you in a very vulnerable place. When you think about being in that place and you're kind of like stripping off your clothes. No one wants to go outside naked. It's shameful. It's embarrassing. Right. That's kind of that same premise. But if you kind of like slowly kind of take things off, and so take layers off, then you kind of take the shame and the embarrassment away from it.
Wow. Hey, listen, everybody, y'all have to share this. Tag somebody. Tell them get in here. Text 504-384-6070. I know somebody got this book. Somebody had to get this book.
They did. I'm over here. The devil is busy, because when I tell you,
don't worry about him. We ain't worrying about him.
Right, at all.
Yeah. So you got to get this book.
We actually had a few people. My internet decided to tell me
Everybody getting books. Sound like
everybody,
Oprah
you get a
tonight,
book.
huh? You
Yeah.
get a book. You get a
Like
book.
Oprah, you get a book. You get a book. You get a book. Well, let's
So
manifest
we
that
have
Oprah
Marlene.
money.
Am I saying this right? Marlene. Can you?
Can you?
Marlene.
Yes. And Marlene, yes. So we have Marlene. And I'll give y'all some more names as these folks have to text me their names as well. But we're back in business over here.
Come on, text and get that book. Alvianne, we was talking about triggers. And Doc gonna have to send me an invoice because I ran up the bill. Sorry, I ran up the bill.
You ran up the bill?
Oh yeah, I done ran up the bill.
Samantha, she's gonna get her a book.
Come on.
Yeah, triggers. So I talk about triggers in the book. Triggers are real. Triggers, I think that, we have to be able to, be able to identify them. Like I tell people all the time, listen, that's a trigger, and you also have to, again, be self-aware to know, like, okay, is this really, me? Is this an anger? Is this a trigger? To this day, if I watch a movie with a father in there that's protecting his child or doing anything of that, a tear might roll. Because, it's like that trigger of, man, I wish I had that feeling of. And so then again, I got to go back, to my praying grandmother, my mother, and I have to remind myself, you know what, because God's going to come. If I call on him, so enough he coming. You know what? And, so I have to remind myself, you know what, that's all right, because if something happens to me, Jesus is sending the army too. My daddy is coming. He's coming. So it's one of those things where, again, you just got to be self-aware and being able to understand that and know when somebody is hitting your trigger. Also, just like, and I don't know if you even talked about that, how to de-escalate or even how to, like, pull yourself back a little bit and understanding what that is and how to even handle that. And Dr. Lawson talks about that, in the book, because she did all of the clinical studies, y'all. So all of this good wisdom you get here today is also in the book, baby. And so, she, expounds on every day, every chapter in the book. She gives a small clinical study. Again, this does not replace therapy. This is only a self-help tool. Again, we strongly advise therapy if you feel like you need it. I believe in therapy. I was one of those people that I'm a Christian. I don't believe in therapy until I had an injury that required a therapist. And guess what? It was a game changer. I tell you all the time, I love therapists. Trinice is like my free therapist. I already call her, give me some free sessions too all the time. She probably needs to bill me a few times.
I gotta send her a love offer, man. She's awesome. She's awesome. I have to send her a love offer.
Yeah.
I think too about therapy. I tell people all the time. I'm actually considered a Christian therapy because I incorporate spirituality into my sessions. So you don't even have to choose. I tell people you can love Jesus and go to therapy too. Like, I'm a Christian, and that's one of the big things that I incorporate into therapy because, like, Jesus is everything. I don't know about you, because you can have all of this knowledge, but at the end of the day, I do believe in God's five voice. There's only so much I can do as a human. There's only so much you can do as a human. And so God ultimately can heal and do the impossible for anything. And so for people that are apprehensive about therapy, you can go to Christian counseling. You can go to Christian therapists. You can go to your pastor. I think the biggest thing that we want to drive home is no one is getting paid to be an ambassador for therapy or anything. The point we want to drive home is get help, seek help. Don't sit there and allow yourself to suffer in depression and have suicidal thoughts and all these anxious feelings and walk around an angry person that's carrying so much. The world is heavy enough. Like, we deal with a lot on a daily basis. So just to add anything extra, just go ahead and just allow somebody, just to have somebody just to talk to, just to vent. I myself am a therapist and have a therapist because you need a place to dump. You just need a place to dump. Like, sometimes I just have so much going on, 50 million things going on. I just need a place to, like, just listen to me for about 50 minutes. I'm good. I'm good. Just let me just dump it all out. Just let me dump it out, and I'm good. So we want to just make sure that you have safe places to dump things. And while family, friends, mothers, aunts, and all those things are good, they carry judgment. They carry biases. They know you personally, so they're gonna oftentimes put a lot of things and they put pressures on you. But when you have therapy, you have this unbiased person who just wants to honestly help you grow and prosper and, and get through a lot of different things. So,
I wanted to say this when Alvianne was talking about, God being her father and being there for. I wanted to say, I grew up in church where if you had a cold, you didn't go to the doctor because we believe Jesus was going to heal us. You go to church. If the child was acting up and had behavioral issues at school, you brought your child to the pastor because pastor going to get them straight and he going to go to school and have better behavior choices. Until I discovered that, I think, America did a horrible job with the ADHD diagnosis at one point because they was diagnosing everybody with it and everybody wasn't that bad off, right? I think it was just a new diagnosis at that particular time. But as a pastor, me personally, I share with people all the time, I believe in the healing power of the Lord Jesus Christ. I believe he can heal you from anything, from addictions, from being chemically imbalanced. He can do all of those things. But I also challenge our people to be exposed and aware of what it is that you're dealing with and stop trying to demonize or over spiritualize everything. Right.
Yep.
And so it's only one to either extreme we go. It's either we're going to demonize it. And sometimes not the devil. It's just that your moods need to be stabilized. You know what I mean? And then sometimes we over spiritualize it to the fact that we would make somebody else suffer in the house with us before we actually absolutely go get some help and absolutely go get the help we need. Biblically, Jesus even asked a question. He said, "Who do men say that I am?" He wants to be aware of who he is, his personality, how people see him, so he can know how to move, how to behave, and how to act. And I think these things are essential to not just talking about the psychological help that we need, but also talking about the fatherlessness, right? You got some people who are tuck it in and take it on the chin and say, well, I never had it. I don't see the benefit of it. And I've discovered as a man that a lot of men, that's why they don't want to work. And they don't want to go to a job. And as a pastor, that's why a lot of men leave church, because they haven't been trained to understand an authoritative voice, right? Those fatherless men, majority of pastors, and y'all ain't gonna get in trouble. I'm gonna get in trouble for this. Let me just take this one online. Majority of pastors who can't take what we consider to be, look, he put me the only one on the screen on purpose. A lot of, and I'm gonna say this, and this because I've been around church for a while, and I've been around a lot of church startups, a lot of pastors, and I'm not saying all, but I'm saying a lot of men who are elders or deacons in the church go out and start a church, probably because they couldn't take an open rebuke or a harsh conversation that man had with his pastor, because they don't understand the compassion and the aggressive, authoritative voice that a pastor must take to pastor people, right? And so he's like everybody else. I don't want nobody telling me nothing. Ain't no man gonna be over me. I've had so many grown men who grew up in the streets. I had so many businessmen. I've had so many lawyers, so many judges tell me, Pastor, I at first, I wouldn't come into your church because I don't believe in a man telling me nothing. This is true stuff. They say things like this. And the next question I asked was, who raised you? You know what I mean? Like in that, I don't ask them like that, but y'all know what I'm saying. Like, I kind of like make it politically correct. Like, who was in the household? And 99% of the time, they had no father. They had no father. They had nobody to chastise them or just to give them some fatherly advice. And 9 times out of 10, they run wild and do whatever they want to do. And I hope Doc ain't get in trouble for what I said.
I didn't say it. You did.
But that's true. A lot of them just, they go out and start these churches and various things. But I like the way you said what you said about, all of this from the psychological perspective to now about this fatherlessness. I think Alvianne did a beautiful job. What you think, Doc?
She did. When she called me about the book, and she was like, I'm really interested in doing this. And of course, I know her personally. We've been friends for many, many years. So I, like you, encourage her to tell her story because I think that's the best healing, like telling your story. And and I know she struggles with not having a dad, and I'm sure you probably do
Yeah.
too. But I also feel like her mom spoken to her, and I'm
Yeah,
sure you
man.
probably speaking to people that, I mean, God knew you were going to be at this point. God equipped you to this point. And I think this made you who you are. And
Yeah.
I think if it was written any different, who knows if your story would have been different. And so
Right.
I think this is written into your plan of where you are and the place you are in life. And just as you learn to grow and accept that place, it's like, okay, no, I didn't have a dad growing up, but that didn't change or alter my course. That didn't faint anything. I'm still fearfully and wonderfully made. And it just goes to a testament to show how hard you work as well as the people around you, that you didn't even have all of the different things that people have. And you still prosper. You're still doing well. You're still, on top of your game. And so that's something to be very proud of.
I mean that's a big thing. Hey, everybody, we're talking about Faith for the Fatherless, author Alvianne Brule, and I pray that you are texting this number 504-384-6070 so you can get your free copy. Or I want to challenge every person who's under the sound of our little voices to really pre-order and get this book, because I once again believe that our city, our state, our country will be better. Our family dynamics can become better with great authors, with a body of work as such, from a clinical perspective, as well as just from a person who experienced these things, the hurts and the pains of it, so we can become better people. I mean, so far we've talked about relationships, and we've talked about how the strain can be put on a relationship because of fatherlessness, and how those things play a part. I know she pointed out to me, and she coming back, but she pointed out to me to make mention about my relationship with my son. I find myself not trying to just give, and Doc, you can help me with this too, not just trying to give my son what I did not have, but trying to make sure that my son learned lessons that I learned. I always try to make sure that he not only received the better part of life that I provide for him, but he also feels some of that pain that I experienced. Not to imply, no, impute it on him, but I want him to feel what it is. And let me give you one quick story. One of my friends called me and they said, Pastor, look, I have some courtside seats. And this is not the first time me and him sat courtside at a basketball game for the Pelicans, but this is another
The
game, right?
presidential, huh? That's the presidential. Okay. I'm just
Yeah.
messing with you. Go ahead.
So it's like, man, we got some seats for you. I'm like, all right, cool, man. Now, mind you, I'm amped up, not because of the basketball game. I'm amped up because once again, I get to take my son to sit courtside. We done been to Saints games. We done been everywhere. And when I told him, I was like, man, we're going to the game tonight, and he was like, all right. He's like 7, 8 years old at this time. And I was driving and I was getting frustrated. The body, right, was trying to prepare me for these emotions. And I was getting heated because I was like, that's not the response I was looking for, right? And so I was trying to hold myself from telling him, how many other sons wish their daddy would have brought, I start just, I start regurgitating all that stuff that was inside. And I was like, how many other children wish their father would take them to a game, and not only to a game, but sit courtside and blase, blase, blase. And he was just like, nonchalant, right? And he went to sleep, and I was heated because I definitely had nobody to talk to at that point. And so I called my mother. I was like, "Ma, can't you believe this boy?" I'm going off. My mama didn't. She said, "Boy, leave that boy alone. Bring him over here and let him sit by me. You go to the game, right?" But I say that because I had a moment. But that was the first moment I had that really exposed me to how hurt I was of not having a father, right? Because I was able to tuck it in throughout my life. But that moment really, really touched me in a deep place, right? I'm sitting at the game mad. You understand what I'm saying? And it wasn't until I was riding home that night after I picked him up from my mother's house, and I was like, man, wow, I didn't know how deeply hurt I was. And I didn't know that one interaction would have touched that deep to bring up all of that. And then I started lashing out on him, right? And so from that moment, I start, kind of dealing with those little pieces, and start trying to be a better father as it relates to how I talk to him and how I try to present it to him, and not try to present it to him out of my hurt as much as trying to make sure that he have a holistic perspective of what fatherhood is all about. Right. And so I start saying things like, I love you more to my son. I start hugging, high-fiving more, or stuff like that, stuff that I didn't have, as a son from a father. But that's what I try to give to him now. Did I do right, Doc? Tell me now. Tell me.
He said, did I do right? I think it's very common for people to project on people that they're closest to. And so oftentimes, like you said, when you're harboring those feelings and you have nowhere to dump them, you do project on the people closest to you. I think one of the things that you brought up, a good point that happens a lot, is parents want to teach their children the experience. But guess what? You can't teach people an experience because everyone learns differently. I'm the type of person to where if you tell me don't go down that street because there's a shooter, Shanice's not going down that street. But then Alvianne could be the type of person who's like, oh, let me see for myself. So I think one of the things to help.
I am.
So I'm gonna get shot. Shanice's gonna be sitting there like I told you. But one of those things too that you want to be able to communicate with your children is create that understanding of communication. The more that they understand what you've been through and you can express it versus projecting in anger, it's just to tell them the story. It's nothing more enlightening than understanding how your parents feel. I think the biggest thing too that we don't understand is children, whether they're 3, 13, 33, 9, they have feelings, they have emotions, and they want to know that you have feelings and emotions too. We often come from this authoritative place as a parent and say, okay, this is what it is. I'm very stonewall. Don't ask me the questions. But if you sit down and say, hey, this is why I'm passionate about us spending time together, because I didn't have that as a dad. And this is how it made me feel. So now that I'm in this place in a dad, I want to be able to share all these things with you. So when you create that dialogue with that child, that communication, it allows them to say, okay, dang, this is why my dad is super passionate about spending time with him. And he doesn't want to see it as aggravating versus just lashing out and saying, you are unappreciative because you don't want to do such and such. So it allows that perspective to become good with expressing emotions and have good emotional regulation, but also understanding that you're human, you have feelings, and this is why you feel the way you feel. So that kind of helps you instead of projecting really strong emotions, such as anger on your kids.
That's invoice 103.
It's so funny you said that though, Trinice, because I swear to you, my mom was ahead of her time and didn't even know the things that she was doing, because she knew that I was the type of child, like you said, that if you said don't go down that street, I'm going down that street. And so because she knew how I was, she always explained everything to me, because I was a why child. I needed to understand why. If you didn't tell me why, I'm going to figure it out. And so because she knew how I was, it was like, let me beat her to the punch. Look, I don't want you to do this, and here's why. But if you decide to do it, here's the pros, here's the cons. She always gave me the options and the choices, and made sure that I understood the consequences that came with it. And it really helped, shape my life, because it also helped me understand who I was and to tackle life the same way as well, and, even though I got, cut off a little bit, but I wanted to piggyback off some stuff Pastor was saying, how you were saying like certain men couldn't tell you certain things, and there's a lot of grown men that's walking around. It's women like that too. I was once that person that a man couldn't tell me anything. You wasn't my daddy. And, I remember getting in trouble. I wasn't even a bad kid. Now, my mom said I always got in trouble for my mouth. That's what she said, because I was always straightforward. And that's what she said. She was like, every time I got called for school, it was something you said. And so, but I recall getting in trouble, from one of my male teachers trying to tell me something. And I'm like, you ain't my daddy? So what happened for me was I got to a point where I understood, unless I knew you loved me, you couldn't correct me. And so, that was my biggest thing. So I was like, you know what? And then as I got older and started reading other books and understanding, like, in order for me to grow, the Bible says that, if you love somebody, you correct them. And so for me, love, correction is a form of love. Because I know if I don't really care about you, I ain't saying nothing. it's on you. But if I love you, I will definitely correct you. You can be mad all you want, but oh well, because I love you, so I'm willing to take that risk. And so for me, I just had to change the way that I interpret what correction looked like. For me, it was more like why and where is this coming from versus you're a male, so you can't tell me nothing. And so I meet from my experience, and talking to women that are fatherless, I meet a lot of women who have relationship problems because they don't want to be corrected by a man. They don't want the man to really, say anything or whatever the case may be, because it's almost like, that same perception of like, and what the other part of it sometimes too, like I always tell people at the same time, it's uncomfortable. Like, even now when men hug me, sometimes I'm uncomfortable. You know what I mean? Because it's like I don't really know what's appropriate or not. You know what I mean? And so sometimes we don't really mean any harm, but it's like I never really had that. When my grandfather was around, I was like 5. After that, he moved out of state. So in my, teenager years or adolescent years, it was like, what does this look like? So I talk about this in the book. I had to rely on my friends' dad, because like I told you, all my friends had fathers. So I would literally rely on watching their interaction with their dad to teach me how I'm supposed to interact with men. Because for me, that's all the depiction I had. I didn't have anybody else to really show me like, well, you're supposed to hug like this, so you don't hug like this. So this is a professional hug. This is the, other hug, or whatever the case may be. So that's kind of, where I am, or I always tell people all the time, when you're talking to certain people, you just have to also understand those things as well, because a lot of it is just like, it's uncomfortable. It's kind of like the first time my mama told me she loved me, it was like creepy, like, what? Ew, what's that? And so, she had to, because she didn't grow up hearing it. And so she was like, well, I want to make sure, and I'm like, yeah, I know, but stop saying it. It just feels funny, And so it's one of those things now where, it's comfortable because she just, she would say it until we both just got comfortable with it, And I just think that's important, when it comes to those kind of things, is also keeping that stuff in mind, that we don't really mean no harm, especially when you have a woman that has a strong personality. It's just kind of like, so for me, I always tell people, if you really, especially a male, I got to know you care. Don't be talking, otherwise, I might be giving you a side eye, in terms of that. And it's funny you even said that, Pastor, because I tell people all the time, I think it's more men, from my experience, that's damaged by growing up fatherless than women. And sometimes I feel like women, because of our nature, we're stronger. We're, we push through more, and men sometimes seemingly struggle with their emotions. And so, that's just kind of, where we are, in all of this. And that's why I think, even though as a woman I talk about it, I think it's even more important for men to start sharing their feelings as well, because I do think there's a lot of men that struggle with that, and what that looks like.
Yeah, I struggle with, initially I used to struggle telling my son I love him. This serious.
Really?
I don't know how to be saying this out here, like, to my little boy, and I was, and until once again, after that experience, doctor, I really started taking into consideration, like you said, I cannot teach him the experience or pass that experience down. I just had to start preparing how to do better as a parent. And that's when I started saying things like, I love you, man, stuff like
Right.
that before we go to sleep, praying with them together. And as a pastor, I knew those things. And let me say this, since I'm representing the pastoral position, I'm a pastor, but I still struggle with it. Right.
Yeah.
Pastor 2 churches at one time, but I still struggled with telling my son, man, love you, bro. I used to try to say it like in a dope way, like, love you, my guy, love you, bro. I was like, I can't be around here saying love you, man. It's just the way I said it. It was like weird, it's like when I said it was weird, and until I always pick him up and drop him off from school, and I had to remind him, and say it to him, and at night, good night, man, love you, man, have a good night, blase. And then, Doc, to be honest with you, then I start explaining to him why I'm so compassionate about us spending time together and FaceTiming and everywhere I went, whether it's to Africa or whether it's to Dubai or wherever I've been at in the world, I always FaceTime him so I can try to expose him to those things that I wish, that I once wished that my father was able to expose to me. And so, man, I sound like I'm about to cry just now. Huh? Y'all heard my voice dip just now?
And it's okay, because I talk about it in the book. It's okay to cry.
Yeah, but I
It
ain't
is
about to cry
okay.
tonight. Doc ain't about to see
Yes,
me
it is
cry. Doc
okay
ain't
to
about to
cry.
see me cry.
Listen,
I
I
probably
am
can
one of
make you
those.
cry.
It was
Most
almost
people
out,
cry.
boy. It was almost out, Jim. It was almost out.
Oh God!
Nah.
Cause listen, Pastor. I don't let nobody see me cry. My mama taught me that in this project. She was like, I don't care what, you don't never let nobody see you sweat, and you don't never let nobody see you cry. I wish you would. And it's one of those things where I'm not letting you see my. If you see me cry, that means I am totally 100% vulnerable with you.
I'm gone.
And so I talk about that, but it is okay to cry. You know what I mean? If you got to cry by yourself, in the room, in the closet, put a pillow over your face, whatever it is, because to me, sometimes you need that, that renewal of what comes from that. I remember the first day I cried and just said, you know what, Lord, I think I might need my daddy. And I just let it all out. It was like, literally, I can physically, again, feeling like I'm having an outer body experience. I can physically feel like something had just lifted off my little shoulders. A little burden was just, gone, and it was a little bit of a relief of me being able to acknowledge, like, this is a problem, or this is how I feel, and it's okay. It really is. It's okay. And I'm not weak because of it. If anything, I tell people all the time, you're actually stronger when you can identify you have issues and you can actually acknowledge it and look yourself in the mirror. Honey, you are strong. Okay? Because that is not for the weak. That is not for the weak at all. And so that's the biggest thing, which kind of brings us to, day 12, where it talks about the impact. And to read a little couple sentences, it says, to me, fatherlessness is something people deal with differently because it impacts people differently. It's important to recognize and acknowledge how it's impacting you and which areas of your life it's impacting. Because I feel like for me, when I was younger, it was different. Younger, it was more of me wanting to have a father to be there to, physically, teach me, certain things. Like I talk about in the book, like I remember one of my friends' dad, like one put gas in our car, and I was like, okay, note to self, like, men's supposed to put gas in your car, you know what I mean? And because I didn't know what that looked like. And, and then it's like, how do you see yourself too? I know a lot of people carry shame. Like for a long time, when people will be like, well, where your dad at? He in jail, and then they're looking at you like you're crazy or jail, like, because people would look at me as if you're cute or you're pretty or you're this, like you got a daddy in jail. You know what I mean? Which even brings more shame because it's like it's this expectation that because of the way I come off, I probably came from a 2-parent household because I don't look or whatever, I guess, to ideal people what a fatherless person looks like, whatever that's supposed to be, right? I didn't fit that mold. So it was almost like then people got inquisitive, and they want to ask me all these extra questions. And it's like, leave me alone. This is not something I really want to talk about. And so I would kind of carry a little, hidden shame because I was always taught, again, you got to hold what you got. If your feet hurt, you better walk to the car with the heels on and you better suck it up till you get to the car. I was raised, you got to hold that pain. If you cry, you better hold it till you get inside. And so, I wouldn't allow people to see
We're having some technical difficulties. Is our screen frozen?
Yes, she is. But y'all text and get this book though. 504-384-6070. It's an amazing amazing body of work. And hey Doc, I don't know if you want to touch on Choose Freedom. If that's something that you want to make mention of. It's in the book, right?
Yeah, choose freedom. I'm not sure what aspect or what excerpt she's gonna read from the book. I just reading the topic because I don't have the book in front of me either, or the excerpt that she's going to specifically See, but I think what I see or what I envision from Choose Freedom is I think you have the choice to want to pursue a relationship with your parent, or you have a choice in any. I feel like you have a choice in anything. Just like we talk about spiritually, God gives you free will, right? So you have the free will to want to engage or dictate or determine how much you want to actively pursue a relationship with someone who's maybe not in your life. You also get to dictate and choose how you want that person in your life. I talk about oftentimes one of the biggest struggles people often have is because they feel like that's their mother or that's their father, they get to they allow themselves to be a doormat to whatever emotions or feelings that come with that. And that doesn't necessarily have to be true. Like I talk about in the beginning, I talk about creating healthy boundaries is important for any relationship. When you create healthy boundaries, you don't allow yourself to be a doormat to anybody, regardless if they're your mother, your grandmother, anybody. You have to protect your peace at all costs. You have to protect your feelings at all costs. And so when you talk about choosing freedom, you talk about that ability that you get to determine. You get to be a part of how you want someone to be in your life, what role you want to play, how active do you want them in your life. If you want someone in your life, you get to say, okay, this is how I want to embed you into my life. This is a part of my life you want to be. Oftentimes I do see a lot of parents when they're like reintroducing themselves to absent parents and they're of adult age, the parent may come in and just completely take over their lives. And so it's overwhelming or it's smothering or it's suffocating. And so oftentimes the person doesn't know how to say, hey, this is a lot. Let's slow this process down. Let's get to know each other, because essentially you're learning a new person. You're learning a new person in the space that they are. I'm an adult, you're an adult now, so things are a lot different. And so you get to slow that pace down. You get to say, okay, let's slowly acclimate. I think anything of too much can be a lot. Just like, for example, if you have a house guest that doesn't want to go home, you're like, this is too much, go home, you're in my space too much. And so that can apply to, just, reacclimating yourself to a parent that's been absent from your life. So I feel like when you say choose freedom, you have the right to say how this relationship looks just as much as the other person does.
I think the part that she may mention in the book about we waste so many years, staying the way we are, staying stuck to your point. We waste so many years not trying to address those issues as it relates to being bound, or in my my area, being bound or being trapped by triggers, or being trapped by those unknown diagnoses, right? But to choose freedom is a liberating thing. I promise you. I think what she put in the book and her body of work as it relates to freedom and having faith for the fatherless is amazing. Y'all have to get the book. You have to get the book for your kids, get the book for your nephews, your nieces, and even adults. I think everybody need to get the book. If you could put that number up there for me, Henderson, and I need everybody to text this number ASAP and get the book. I believe it's imperative that we have it circulating throughout our streets. And even, in today's society, we are putting a lot of emphasis on entrepreneurship, and no knock to none of that. But I think, I want to see this, Doc. I really want to see a healthy, holistic community of people who are prospering, but healthy though. And I'm not talking just physical health, working out. And this is one of the questions I always ask one of my close friends, Corey Kelly. I always ask him, man, how you doing up top? I know you're swollen and everything, but how you doing up top? Because, the truth is, man, I think we have to become more healthy holistically, from our mental state of mind, our spiritual disposition, as well as dealing with all of these different range of emotions that we have to kind of tunnel through to make progress in life. So I love it. I love it.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. My prayer for this book is really to open up conversations, to heal wounds, to potentially even, create some type of reconciliation in some cases where it's applicable, because for me, I talk about it in my book where me and my dad finally got out of jail after 18 years, and I talk about what that experience was like for me. Everybody's journey is not going to be the same. And, that's what I talk about in the book. We all kind of walk our own path. But the key is to just, talk to God and, and really figure out what's best for you. And again, whether it's leaning to your pastor or your spiritual leader or finding your therapist or a combination of both, whatever it is, my hope and prayer is that we become whole, healthy, and be able to love and, live a life, free of shame, of guilt, or any negative images that the devil want to use when it comes to fatherlessness. We want to just break those generational curses and just become, whole and healthy individuals. That's the hope and goal, with this book.
Awesome, man. Awesome. And so tell us when it's released, Alvianne.
Officially today. So if they go ahead and they want, to order the ones that got the free book, we'll be shipping them out next week. Anyone that pre-orders right now, if you text hashtag FATE to 504-384-6070 and purchase the book, you'll get it next week as well. And they'll also give you an autographed copy. And again, I have a Facebook group. When you send that text, it'll give you a link to it if you want to join that so we can continue the conversations. Cool. Also, if we ever do this, again, when we do this again, I should say, and my internet works better, let me just say, I'll be able to send you a message, from you adding yourself, sending this text in. And so if there's anyone that again, share the information, because that's another thing we don't do. We don't share information. We don't have these tough conversations. We don't, talk about these things and our feelings. And when we should, we talk about all those other crazy stuff, housewives and, this, that, and the third, and girl this and girl that. And, now it's time for us to have, and because it's funny, and I was telling Pastor this before, every time I would get to the point where I'm like, Lord, I don't want to release this book, he would literally send somebody in my life who will start talking about the book and fatherlessness. The person start breaking down crying, like, I needed this. And it's like, all right, Lord. So I do think it's a really good space. And again, the biggest thing that I also want people to know that it's not easy. These feelings are real. You're going to have bad days. It's going to get rough. We all go through that. And so my biggest hope and prayer is either you need that Bible or, again, a spiritual leader, a counselor, somebody to lean on, or a friend that is emotionally stable and strong enough to help you lean, through all of this or sift through this. Because sometimes when you start picking that wound, you got to be prepared to clean them as well. And that's my biggest thing. Now, I don't want anybody to start tapping into this and then this, because this can be, overwhelming, because especially when it's something that you haven't really tackled or touched in a long time. Because I remember I was dating a guy and I'll never forget. I was like, boy, you got daddy issues. He almost called me everything but a child of God, because he was so, hurt about that. So, we want to make sure that, again, we're encouraging healthy relationships and healing when it comes to this book. Any last words, Pastor?
Man, I'm excited about it. I'm definitely going to get it and try my best to sponsor as many people to get this book because I think it's necessary. And like I told you privately, and I tell you publicly, we're proud of you and the work and the content. This body of work is needed. Seriously, it's really needed. And I believe it's going to be a huge success in multiple areas, in multiple rooms, from people who are entrepreneurs as well as those who work in Fortune 500s to the church. I think it's generic. It touches, it's an equalizer. It touches everybody differently. And all of us can heal totally different. I just want to know, Doc, can I come back on the panel?
Alvianne runs the show.
I promise you I ain't gonna run the bill up next time. All right. I just wanted to get that out. But congratulations, my girl.
Thank you. My last request for everyone who gets this book, if you like the book, if you love the book, I'm just gonna ask that you post, you share, or you buy forward. Buy it for someone else. Because again, we're trying to create opportunity. You know what I'm saying? So if you get the book and you like it and you really feel like it helps, buy a book and give it to somebody else and post about it and share and tell everybody about it. That's the only thing I ask. Other than that, I appreciate you guys listening and joining us in. I appreciate all the feedback, the text messages, the Facebook messages coming up. It makes my heart smile. And, Dr., because my friend just got her PhD, girl. I just want to say thank you so much.
Yes,
I appreciate you so much for your wisdom. And, I think she is taking a few new clients. So anybody needs services, you better get at her right now, because when she gets locked up, she does not accept any more clients. So you might want to get in while you can.
Thanks for the shameless plug, Alvianne.
But other than that, until next time, I really want to, I know both of you guys are busy, but hopefully we'll be able to do something like this quarterly and keep helping folks. And
I
while
will
we
be
helping
offended if I'm not invited back.
Oh,
I will
Beth,
be
you
very
stuck.
offended.
You stuck with this journey. You put me out here. You are stuck. You are stuck.
Yeah, you got to do it. I love it.
Oh, thank you, Stephanie. We enjoyed having you.
Thank you.
All right.
Come on, run that video, Henderson.
Daddy-o! What's up? Will, I'm glad you're here. Some business came up I gotta handle. So we're gonna have to put our trip on hold. You understand?
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
Just for a couple of weeks.
I understand.
Maybe a little longer.
Yeah, whatever.
Look, I'll call you next week and we'll iron out the details, okay?
Yeah.
It was great seeing you, son.
You too, Lou.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Will.
You know what? Actually, this works out better for me. You know, the Slimmies of summer come to class wearing next to nothing. You know what I'm saying?
Will, it's all right to be angry.
Hey, why should I be mad? I'm saying at least he said goodbye this time. I just wish I hadn't wasted my money buying this stupid present.
I'm sorry. If there was something that I could
Hey, you know what? You ain't got to do nothing, Uncle Phil. Hey, ain't like I'm still 5 years old, you know? Ain't like I'm gonna be sitting up every night asking my mom, when's Daddy coming home, you know? Who needs him? Hey, he wasn't there to teach me how to shoot my first basket, but I learned, didn't I? Hey, I got pretty damn good at it too, didn't I, Uncle Phil?
You did.
Got through my first day without him, right? I learned how to drive, I learned how to shave, I learned how to fight without him. I had 14 great birthdays without him. He never even sent me a damn card. To hell with him! I ain't need him then and I don't need him now.
Will.
Nah, you know what, Uncle Phil? I'm gonna get through college without him. I'm gonna get a great job without him. I'm gonna marry me a beautiful honey, and I'm gonna have me a whole bunch of kids. I'm gonna be a better father than he ever was. And I sure as hell don't need him for that, because ain't a damn thing he could ever teach me about how to love my kids. How come he don't want me, man?